Welcome to Wolverine Confidential Podcast. I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The transfer portal is now closed, and Michigan's football roster is taking shape for the 2026 season. We break down the latest additions and retentions and what it all means moving forward. Plus, men's basketball is on the rise again in the AP poll ahead of Tuesday's matchup against Indiana. Happy Tuesday morning to you, Aaron. I guess just right off the hop here, I mean, we'll mention that Andrew might be out for a bit. We're thinking of him, praying for him, hoping he can return as soon as possible. But in the meantime, it will be Aaron and I. I guess with that said, the football season is over. The Indiana football Hoosiers are national champions. I mean, I know we've talked about throughout the years, like, are they for real? Is this sustainable all season? Turns out it was 16-0. Just an incredible achievement for that program and Kurt Signetti. And it ended up being a close game too. 27-21 came down to the final drive. What were your takeaways from that game? And were you surprised by anything in that game?
Surprised at this point, no. I mean, they've been playing lights out football now for a while. You know, you just wondered how they would perform right on the big stage. And then they go and beat Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. And it's like, okay, this team is for real. And then they handle business there in the playoff. You wondered if Miami had a shot there late. But in the end, I think the better team won. Indiana was the better team, both sides of the ball. They had the better quarterback, the better playmakers. I mean, they had some critical plays there, right? Like third and fourth down plays that they call those back shoulder fade passes from Fernando Mendoza. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to make a movie like a Hoosiers version, a football version of Hoosiers, because this team was incredible. The last 2 years, right? Like, I still remember being at Big Ten Media Days a couple of years ago, and Kurt Signetti getting up there, and at that point he was a brand new coach, and that's when he uttered the line, "Google me, I win," and everyone thought it was cute and funny and everything, but like, the dude followed through, right? He called a shot, and it was quite an impressive 2 years. I saw his line, I think, in the post game press conference after the game last night, about how if he was smart, he should retire and hang it up, because I don't think you can get a better 2 years, but he doesn't. He can't, because he needs the money. So I don't see Indiana letting him go anytime soon. He's probably got a job for life there in Bloomington. Even if this team were to go in 12 the next couple of years, I mean, my gosh, I mean, it was an incredible season for them.
Yeah, I mean, just I saw on Twitter X today too, of like a photo of the stands of his first game in Bloomington, and just empty, like no, like very little fan interest. And then sure enough, in the national championship at Miami's home stadium, the Hoosiers fans show up. And there was definitely more Indiana representation there, by all accounts. And yeah, just an incredible run. I mean, I kind of had a feeling like when Miami had a chance to win in Carson Beck's hands, I'm like, if it was roles reversed and it was Fernando Mendoza with a chance to win, maybe, yeah, all right, I would believe that he would go down and win it. But I don't know, Carson Beck just doesn't really impress me. Like, he wasn't able to take any downfield shots all game, and of course, when he does, he gets picked off to kind of cement it. And yeah, just another Big Ten champion, three in a row. And I mean, looking at Michigan for next year, guess what? Indiana's on the schedule. There's a bunch of like early 2000 or top 25 teams on their schedule for next year. You have Oklahoma, you have Indiana, you have Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. Like, it's going to be a gauntlet, but we're starting to get a sense now of what Michigan's roster might look like. And I mean, considering everything that happened with Sherrone Moore and the timing of it, it's not looking too shabby for Kyle Whittingham and company. They had a busy week with the transfer portal closing. Obviously, players who are already in the portal don't have to have a finalized decision yet, but like, no new entrants are allowed. And the Wolverines were able to retain some key young pieces on the roster and added a few more too through the portal. So I guess first off, give us a quick rundown of the latest activity, and we will move forward about what it all means next.
Yeah, really quick. Since we last recorded last week, Michigan had 5 guys enter the portal. None of them were like major names, guys that played a ton. Tevis Metcalf, TJ's younger brother, Peyton O'Leary, the receiver, who apparently is eligible for 6th year. I didn't know that he was. Jake Garcia is going for another year, the quarterback. Lawrence Hattar, the offensive lineman transfer from Fair State, entered, and then receiver Anthony Simpson. None of those guys played a major factor the last couple of years. They were backups, third stringers, guys, reserve guys. So not a there weren't any big losses there. Returning, there's some notable names on here. Some guys, many of these guys we expected to come back. Some of them had actually entered the transfer portal and decided to come back. We'll start with Jordan Young, the defensive back, reserve guy, but I think many in the Michigan program feel like he's got a bright future. Tight end Hogan Hansen is returning. Defensive end Nate Marshall, who saw some playing time this year as a true freshman. A big key addition here. He didn't enter the portal, but I know there was some talk behind the scenes of him potentially doing it. Was defensive tackle Trey Pierce. He was a starter, played a lot of football. I think they expect him to come back and play a lot this year as well. Reserve linebacker Nathaniel Wusu Boateng saw his name quite a bit there toward the back half of the year. I think they expect big things out of him. He's coming back as well, along with edge Dom Nichols, defensive back Rod Moore, another name we had heard obviously going back to the bowl prep. He had sought a 60 year from the NCAA, a medical hardship waiver from them, and I think was waiting to hear back from them, and then waiting to hear where things stood with Michigan's coaching staff. It sounds like all both sides are on board. He's ready to go, and he's coming back for another year. Hopefully, for Michigan's case, healthier than he was last year. And then lastly, on the return list, another key name. This name did enter the portal. Defensive tackle Eno Etta, another guy who he was a reserve defensive tackle, but played a lot of football this past year. Michigan was just using a lot of guys and rotating as we discussed all year. And he saw quite a few snaps, so he figures to be in the mix as well to start a defensive tackle. So those are your returners from guys who played last year, and then the additions. I mean, there's a ton of names here. I'll run through them quickly, and then we can kind of go over individually who we want to here. But offensive lineman Houston Kahanya Torres from Nebraska, linebacker Max Alford from BYU, defensive back Chris Bracey from Memphis, quarterback Colin Hurley from LSU, defensive back Smith Snowden from Utah, linebacker Christian Pierce from Western Illinois, long snapper Gavin Magorian from Marshall, athlete Celesi Moa from Utah, his brother linebacker Isaiah Moa from Michigan State, and then lastly the latest addition that came out over the weekend, linebacker Nathaniel Staling from North Dakota State.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's yeah, a lot of names there. I mean, who do you think, as far as the additions go, could has the best potential to make an immediate impact next season?
A couple guys on this list. I guess I'll go in order just based off of what I just read off. Chris Bracey, the safety from Memphis, played a lot of football last year. Made a lot of 81 tackles. He's 6'1", 195, so he kind of fits the mold of fitting in right away and playing. He was very productive last year. Memphis, 81 tackles, 9.5 TFLs, 9 pass breakups, interception. A playmaker. So I think he's a guy who I think Michigan feels they can come in and play right away. They needed more depth at safety. They lost Brandon Hillman. They lost Jane Mangum. They lost some key guys. They weren't sure about Rod Moore. So getting Rod Moore obviously back would help. Bracey's a guy who can come in and certainly fill and play right away. Smith Snowden, the cornerback from Utah, he was their best DB last year. He was a second team All Big 12 guy, 37 tackles, 2 TFLs, 11 passes defended. Started every game last year. He was a second team All Big 12. Played some nickel in 2024 for Utah. The curious thing with him is he is a little undersized. He's listed at 5'10" and 185 pounds. Now I went back and looked at Michigan's roster this past year, specifically in the secondary, and he would have been the second, I think, shortest and second smallest DB in the room. He's smaller than Zeke Berry. So I do wonder where they're looking at to kind of put him in the secondary. My guess is at nickel. Maybe he can hold up a corner, but he is a bit undersized. So I'm curious to see what they do with him. But either way, he was an impact player at Utah last year, and he's obviously familiar with what Utah wants to do. He's familiar with Kyle Whittingham, and so a key piece there. And then the third name, um, he's and we get more about him in a minute. But he's technically a transfer, the Celestia Moa from Utah, but he's really a true freshman too. He committed Tennessee, signed with Utah back in early December, enrolled in school there, was there for like a week or two, and then he put himself in the transfer portal and has decided to play at Michigan. So yes, he's a transfer, but he's also a true freshman. He played both sides of the ball in high school. He's a star receiver, star defensive back. I'm guessing Michigan's going to try him at both right now, but I think just from an impact perspective, the ability to play right away, I got to think he's going to see the field early at receiver. I mean, Michigan needs help there. He's a speedy guy. He's got good size. I got to think they're going to give him some run here early. His first year at receiver.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge addition and maybe not a huge impact player as a true freshman right away, but a guy who was a top 50 recruit in this past class, giving Michigan now 3 top 50 guys, which is huge considering how they did lose a few guys after Sharon left. So be able to pry him away this late in the game, massive addition for Whittingham and his staff, and not exactly too surprising given that like he was, I mean, how many Utah connections are on staff at Michigan now? And even before that, Michigan was one of his finalists too. They wanted him even before that. But I heard that they were just recruiting him as a DB originally under the prior staff. Now that you potentially add receiver to his plate too, and at least give him the opportunity. Like, what does it hurt to try him at both positions, especially when you've had such little production from the receiver position for the past couple of years. So I think that's massive. Yeah, I don't know how much of an impact it will be right away too. And yeah, you mentioned Snowden. I mean, yeah, he might be undersized, but watching D'Angelo Pons with Indiana during this playoff, I mean, he's at 5'9", and he was just an absolute shutdown corner for them. Played physical, and it's like, all right, you know what? If he can do that in the Big Ten, maybe you don't need to be 6 feet 6'1", 6'2" to be an effective corner in the Big Ten. Obviously it's ideal, but I mean, yeah, his Snowden's resume is pretty impressive too. And yeah, as we know, Michigan needed a little bit more experience in the secondary, and it seems like they got that.
They did, yeah. I think we'll dive more, we'll dive deeper into it as the offseason goes along. But I mean, Michigan's secondary is looking very good on paper. If they can get a healthy Rod Moore back, and get all these guys acclimated, I mean, the secondary could very much be the strength of this Michigan defense, especially given the lack of right now, at least the lack of maybe playmakers or obvious playmakers at linebacker. The linebacker was a strength of the Michigan defense last year. I don't see that at this point going into 2026. They've done a very good job of filling the gaps in the back end. So looking very good there. One name I do want to mention, and when I mentioned him at the end of the list, I kind of glossed over him, but this is an intriguing guy. The linebacker Nathaniel Staling out of North Dakota State. He's listed at 6'2", 238. He had his 2024 season cut short by a shoulder injury. Didn't play much before then. He broke out last year at North Dakota State. And for those unfamiliar, North Dakota State was the number one ranked team in the FCS all season long. They got upset in the second round of the playoffs, finished 12-1. But this kid racked up 75 tackles, 6 TFLs, 3 interceptions, a sack and a half, and a PBU. He was kind of a do-it-all. He was technically a middle linebacker, but he was kind of a do-it-all guy. I mean, he did a ton. He's able to drop in coverage. He's able to play at the line of scrimmage. He's built like a guy who could, I think, come in and play right away at Michigan. And if you go back to his roots, I mean, impressive. He played in high school. He played quarterback, running back, safety, punter, kicker. He was a team captain in high school. He played baseball, basketball, ran track and field, kind of like an all-American dude. So I got to think he's going to get an opportunity to play right away at Michigan at middle linebacker. They need help there. He's played 3 years in college now. He was very productive at North Dakota State last year. He was a guy who kind of flew under the radar out of high school. I mentioned all his accolades and everything he did, but he didn't have a ton of offers. It was like North Dakota State. I think Minnesota might have came in late, and a couple other, maybe Montana and some other FCS schools. So perhaps a diamond in the rough there. I'm curious to see what he does, what type of production, what opportunity he's going to get. But he's a guy I think to watch out for, a linebacker heading into 2026, especially given just the lack of depth at the spot.
Did you get a sense of like how coveted he was in the transfer portal, or were there a lot of programs after him? Does it sound like?
I have not. It didn't seem like there was a ton of interest, so I don't know if he was flying under the radar or what happened there. Now, obviously, I'll say this: Michigan needs help at linebacker. I've been talking. That's been the theme of this podcast. I feel like, and they've added some names here, right? Like they added Max Alford from BYU. He was a former walk-on he was a former player there, didn't play a ton. He's a nephew of Tony Alford, the running backs coach. They added Christian Pierce, a linebacker from Western Illinois. He's a younger brother of Trey Pierce, as I mentioned earlier, the defensive tackler at Michigan. He's another name to pay attention to because yes, he's coming from Western Illinois, didn't play last year, redshirted, but he had a lot of Power Five offers out of high school. Michigan, LSU. There were some other big name programs out in that list. I think Alabama was in that list as well. I'm guessing it was an injury out of high school that stopped him, prevented him from ending up at some of these bigger schools. So, assuming he's healthy and able to go, he might be a name to watch as well. He's going to only be a redshirt freshman, but he's good sized. He was coveted out of Chicago, Brother Rice High School. He's a guy that was coveted out of high school that may eventually be an impact player. Maybe not this year, but down the line for the Wolverines.
One more thing I wanted to talk about here too is the quarterback room. I mean, yes, we know Bryce Underwood's going to be the starter, but I mean, depth is important. Last year, we really only saw Bryce take meaningful snaps, but I mean, it's you never know one play away from needing a backup to come in and play meaningful snaps. And Mission really remade their quarterback room this offseason. I mean, Gons, Jake Garcia, Mikey Keene, Jaden Davis, but they add a couple new maybe a little bit more intriguing options at the position. I mean, Colin Hurley from LSU, Braden Fowler Nicolosi from Colorado State. I mean, just what do you make of the quarterback room now?
Yeah, it's gonna be different looking, right? Other than Bryce Underwood, you've got some new names and unfamiliar faces. As you said, Michigan's quarterback room has basically been wiped out. You didn't mention Davis Warren; he transferred out. The only
Davis
name
Ward too,
left,
yeah.
aside from Bryce Underwood, the only name left from that room last year is Chase Herbstreit, Kirk Herbstreit's son, and it wouldn't surprise me if he were to transfer out eventually too. So Michigan's had to restock the quarterback room. Bryce Underwood, there's no doubt about it. Bryce Underwood is the number one guy at this point. He will be the front runner, obviously in fall camp. He will be the guy. There's been no bone. Kyle Whittingham has made no bones about Bryce Underwood being the guy, but you also need to bring in help. And they did that. I think Braden Fowler Nicolosi from Colorado State, very experienced guy, kind of similar to like Mikey Keene last year, right? We talked about Michigan needing depth and someone to push Bryce Underwood. And Keem was expected to be that guy, but injuries got in the way. But there's no doubt about it. He was very productive out of college. He had experience elsewhere, and you needed that backup guy in there in case God forbid something were to happen. So Fowler Nicolosi is that guy, and then you mentioned Colin Hurley from LSU. He was a high level recruit out of high school. Didn't play much last year as a true freshman at LSU, but I think that obviously the staff views there's an upside there. There's a potential there down the line. So you've got three guys there who I think they feel comfortable with, and then I mentioned Chase Herbstreit, and then you've got the two freshmen coming in as well. Eventually, they feel like those guys can be playmakers, but you need experience right now. Obviously Bryce has it; he's the guy, but you need a legitimate backup, and I do think they have that in Fowler Nicolosi.
Let's zoom out for this whole transfer portal window real quick. And I mean, out of all the departures and all the additions, give me three of each where you think are the most notable and impactful.
Yeah, departures. I think the biggest departure for Michigan was Cole Sullivan. We talked about the need at linebacker. He was a rising star. He played very well down the stretch there for Michigan on the back half of the year. And I think there was a assumption that he was going to be back. I mean, they needed a star linebacker. He was going to be that guy, but he decides to go elsewhere and goes to Oklahoma. So I think that was probably the biggest loss for Michigan this offseason from the transfer portal perspective. I don't think Michigan necessarily expected him to go. I think they certainly wanted him back, yet he decided to go. So I think certainly that was their biggest departure, I think, there. Justice Haynes obviously would have been nice to have back. I think there was some hope internally that he was going to come back. But look, given the nature of college football, where running backs are able to field some high dollar amounts and go elsewhere and get more playing time, it made sense, right? With Jordan Marshall coming back, at best here, they're going to split time again going into 2026. And if you're Justice Haynes looking at the situation, right, weighing whether to declare for the NFL draft, weighing whether to come back to Michigan, or weighing whether to go elsewhere, if you're going to come back to college, it would make sense to go somewhere where you can be the clear number one. So that was another hit for Michigan. And then, thirdly, TJ Metcalf probably from the defense and then the defensive back end on the defensive backfield. One of their best, arguably one of their better defensive backs this past year. It'd been nice to have him back for another year. He was a playmaker, experienced
Versatile,
veteran.
very versatile
Yeah,
too.
and versatile. Right, could have filled a couple of spots. I think those are the three. To me, those are the three biggest departures.
I guess as far as additions, I mean, the guys I'm potentially looking at is, I mean, JJ Buchanan. I mean, just I'm curious because they didn't really bolster the tight end position much in the through the portal, and they lost some guys, well, and their number one tight end to the NFL draft. So you wonder if, I know they listed him as a receiver, but like, do they try and use him at tight end a little bit too to that'll be intriguing. But yeah, bottom line, he's a playmaker, a big target that can catch the ball. And then yeah, I think Taylor Tatum, how he fits into the running back rotation will be interesting. And yeah, you got to be able to rush the passer. And with Derek Moore gone, they're going to need to generate some pressure. And John Henry Daly is a guy that I think can potentially. I mean, yeah, we talked on the last pot about him being a little bit undersized for the Big Ten, but his track record is pretty intriguing.
Yeah, I agree with all three. Buchanan's interesting because, as you said, like he was technically listed as a tight end last year at Utah, but he played more receiver. And then when Michigan announced him officially for the roster, they listed him as a receiver. So he's a big dude. He's a little bit, he's in this weird like middle phase, right? Where I think he's a little bit bigger than the average receiver, and he's a little bit smaller than the average Big Ten tight end or Michigan tight end. So I think they're going to have to find. I think he's a mismatch guy. Like you're going to have to get him in situations where I think you get him in against like a slower linebacker, and you can have the advantage. And look, we talked about they need help at receiver. He certainly provides that. He's a guy who can come in and be, I think, impactful right away. So I'm curious to see how he looks. Intrigued there. I think he's gonna get a lot of targets. As far as the tight end usage, Utah did like to use the tight end a lot. You go back year after year, and there's always a tight end or sometimes two within their like top five pass catchers. But from a pass blocking and run blocking situation, they didn't use the tight ends as much. They would use their tight ends more in receiving situations. So I think my guess is, and we haven't spoken to Kyle Whittingham yet in a few weeks since they've made these additions. But my guess is they feel pretty good about what they have at tight end. Hogan Hampton's coming back. Zach Marshall's coming back. Guys that can catch passes but can also block, and then Buchanan, who is almost purely a pass catching tight end. So I think they probably feel fine with what they got. I don't think you're going to see the tight ends used as much in run blocking situations. And Kyle Whittingham told us this in Orlando. Expect more 11 personnel, and that's one running back, one tight end. In some of their looks, so I think they're more trying to find more traditional receivers, relying a little less on tight ends, but that doesn't mean they're not going to use them because they are. There's a track record of them using tight ends at Utah. They've clearly like to use them at Michigan. And look, they've got some experienced guys already there. So I wouldn't be as worried about that. Um, Jamie French is intriguing, the receiver from Texas. I know he didn't play much as a freshman. He was a high level guy, coming out of high school, a 4-star, borderline five. He goes the line, a guy who's I think still trying to prove himself. And I think this is going to be an opportunity at Michigan to do that. He's going to get reps right away, be able to come in almost immediately and catch passes. So I really like what Michigan did in the pass catching department here this offseason. They needed more weapons for Bryce O'Neal. We talked about that all offseason. I thought they did a pretty good job of it. But you nailed pretty much the big names. I mean, John Henry Daly, the defensive end edge, is clearly going to come in and probably play right away. I don't know if it's going to be in a traditional edge spot or it's going to be like an outside linebacker role. Michigan's going to have some configuring to do defensively because, as I talked about, they're a little thin in experience at linebacker, traditional middle linebacker, but they've got some pretty good depth in the back end, and they did a good job of building up the front line of the defensive line. So are they going to play with three defensive tackles and a couple outside linebackers, mix in some middle linebackers and play with a five-man back end? We're going to have to find out here because if you look at, Jay Hill, their defensive coordinator, what he did at BYU, did a little bit of everything. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if you see a defense and we'll get into it more this offseason, but it wouldn't surprise me if you see this Michigan defense, this fall, look a little versatile, some different looks, kind of similar to what Jesse Minter liked to do a couple years ago when he's DC. So some intriguing options here based on the players they brought in.
All right, let's pivot to basketball now. Michigan men begin a stretch of three straight home games beginning Tuesday night against Indiana. They're returning from a West Coast trip, a pair of victories over Washington and Oregon. I was at a wedding in New Orleans for Saturday, or yeah, Saturday. Or I think Saturday's game against Oregon, so wasn't able to catch it. But it sounds like you did too. I mean, Oregon not a powerhouse in the Big Ten this year, kind of near the bottom. But again, it's tough traveling across country, and it seems like Michigan pulled one out with a big second half.
Yeah, and Oregon was down their 2 top guys. They're missing their starting point guard and starting center, so I think there was this assumption, right, that Michigan was gonna go in there and pound them, and look, they handled business. They were I think they led almost the entire game. They shot pretty well. They were 49% from the floor and 9 out of 23 from 3, which is much improved from their first game out there against Washington. You know, a late first half run, Oregon, actually late first half run gave Oregon a 1 point lead at halftime. So you were curious to see where this was going to go, especially with Oregon not having some of their better players. But Michigan really made a run there early in the second half, 10-2 run there early in the second, kind of made the difference. Adayamara really, really, complete, productive couple of games out on the West Coast for him. He played very well. First game against Washington, he had 20 points on 10 of 11 shooting, 3 blocks. He dominated the paint, controlled the glass, and rim protected relatively well against Oregon on the next night. Michigan got really good guard play. Elliot Cadeau had 17 points, led the team, 5 of 8 shooting. He bounced back. He had a really bad night against Washington. He was scoreless. He had 4 fouls. Didn't play relatively well. I think he only played 20 minutes against Washington. So came back and bounced back very nicely against Oregon. And look, Michigan was just a better team. Yes, they're on the West Coast. You're dealing with all that stuff, but they handled business. I think that's the end of the deal here, right? Like they're coming off a loss. They're going out west. You wonder how they're going to react or respond, and they come away with a couple of victories by double digits too. I mean, they may not have covered the spread, but they played relatively well and they got the job done. I forgot to mention Morris Johnson, Michigan's quote unquote junkyard dog, had a relatively really good game against Washington, I should say. 18 points, 7 of 13 shooting, 16 rebounds. He was all over the glass along with Adayamara. So Michigan's now 16-1. They moved up to the number 3 in the AP poll this week, and they got a couple of Indiana tonight, as you said, 7 o'clock on Peacock, and then Ohio State again. Ohio State Friday night, 8 o'clock on Fox. They're honoring Trey Burke for that one. They're going to raise his jersey, the Chrysler Center Rafters. So Michigan back on the winning track, handle business, and look, when they make these cross country trips to the West Coast, that's all you can ask for. You want to win. At the end of the day, that's all that matters, and Michigan's able to handle business against both teams.
I mean, you kind of wonder if Indiana fans are even going to give any crap about this game tonight. But I guess, I mean, as far as the Michigan side, what are you looking for tonight? Because you'll be covering the game at Chrysler.
Yeah, I mean, look, fast start would be key, right? Like they have been off for a few days. My guess is I don't know. My guess is they got Sunday off to just to rest and relax, coming back from the West Coast. Maybe they have tired legs. We'll see. But look, this is a game Michigan should win. I think they're double digit favorites once again. They need to keep winning here. They want to keep maintaining and try and get closer to the number 1 ranking. But these are 2 winnable games. Ohio State's not having a great year either. So Michigan can get back and continue and get another win streak going here.
Now, as far as the women's side, they had picked up a ranked win over Illinois at home on Thursday, 85-69, and then traveled to New Jersey for the Coretta Scott King Classic against undefeated Vanderbilt, number 5 team in the country, a top 10 showdown, and really just ended up being a nail biter after Michigan fell behind 17 points in the first half, clawed back to make it a 2-point game in the waning seconds. I mean, had a good look at a go ahead 3 with 4 seconds remaining, missed. Vandy got the rebound and went 1 for 2 from the line, giving the Wolverines a final shot to tie. They were able to inbound and get an off balance corner 3 off with time expiring, but it was off the mark. But still, I mean, just a valiant effort from Michigan that continues to play well against top competition. I mean, as we know, they also lost 72-69 to number 1 UConn earlier in the year. Their only other loss was on the road at Washington, and that's their only loss in Big Ten play in a real top-heavy Big Ten conference. so far. So they got a few games coming up here this week. Rutgers on the road on Thursday, then returning home January 25th against USC. Yeah, on Sunday. So yeah, I mean they're right in the thick of the Big Ten race. They were seventh for this Vanderbilt game, and I mean I don't think a 3 point loss to an undefeated team should hurt their ranking very much moving forward. So yeah, both basketball teams top 10 right now. Michigan hockey still number one, 4 straight wins coming out of winter break. Swept Minnesota on the road. Put up almost I think 100 total shots over the 2 games. And that's without their starting goalie. Their first action since their starting goalie Stephen Peck only allowed 3 goals total in the series, 5-1, and a 3-2 overtime victory for Michigan hockey, who gets a little bit of a break here, a bye week before returning to the ice the following week against Ohio State. So yeah, a lot going on in the sports world and at the University of Michigan. We'll keep you updated on the latest, and thanks for listening.